for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be healthy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment every day. Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be happy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment to show you care. Take a moment to show you care. Just to show how much you care. Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Healing Moment here with the Good News Gospel Seventh Adventist Church here in Barbados. Welcome. This evening, we would like to welcome all our guests who are joining us from various parts of the world, from various parts of the Caribbean. Right now, I would like to welcome the Holy Spirit with us, as well as our very esteemed speakers who join us every week to grace us with their wisdom and with their presence. I'd like to welcome, first of all, Pastor Alvin Lucas, Miss Cherie Sobers, and Dr. Corin Dupuis. So at this moment, I would like to pause for Dr. Lucas to welcome us with prayer and with words of inspiration.
Good evening to everybody. We're glad to be with you one more time for the purpose of our weekly meeting. Let us all pray as we begin, please. Our Father in heaven, we give you thanks and we give you praise for today. We give you thanks and praise for being the God that you are. We ask you, Lord, in a special way to be with us this evening as we take our parts, participate in this healing moment session. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I want to share with you the devotional thought as we continue on the theme of resilience. Psalm chapter 18 and verse 16 tells us this. He sent from above. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. I was 19 years old when I almost drowned to death. That afternoon, there was nothing planned on the camp schedule, and my friend Felix and I decided to sail in a pirogue or canoe. It's a light, narrow, small boat, usually propelled by paddling. So my friend and I went on that pirogue deep into the lake. It was Entre Peñas Reservoir, built on the channel of the Tagus River in the central plateau of Spain. Now, that evening, the water was calm and it was also cool. So we got into the pirogue and we went out into this lake. 2 kilometers from the shore, we decided to jump into the water to cool down from the midday heat and to swim around the canoe. When we started to jump, the boat flipped over. We flipped it back, but realized that the water had gotten into the canoe. We turned it over again to drain the water, but instead more water got in. Felix decided to hold on to the semi-floating canoe, thinking that it would sink I started swimming toward the shore. As I was swimming back to the shore, I noticed swirling currents under the water that prevented me from swimming with ease. After a few minutes, I got a cramp in my left leg and later my right leg. In the depths of my despair, I screamed, "Help, help!" I was shouting for help while trying to keep myself afloat. But I soon realized that I could not do it much longer. I entrusted myself to God and accepted the fact that at any time my strength would wane and that it would be the end of my life. A few minutes later, I saw an outboard motorboat approaching, and a man held out his hand, grabbed my hand, and pulled me out of the water. Then he rescued Felix, and this is how we were both saved. Now, he was a neighbor who had heard my voice from the bank and came to our rescue. I do not understand how he could have heard me from such a distance. Unquestionably, it was God, who always hears me in my troubles, who took the song to my neighbor so that he could rescue us. Those minutes of agony seemed like hours. However, this experience improved my resilience. It helped me to realize and also to meditate upon God's divine mercy and the opportunity the Lord gave me to be reborn. In moments of discouragement, I remember the bitter experience and it kept me going. I know that God saved me from death and would keep protecting me according to his will. Now, perhaps you are dealing with difficult moments, health, relationships, work, or spiritual crisis. Maybe you are frightened about an upcoming affliction. Whatever the threat is, the Lord is ready to save you and make you stronger to face greater challenges by his grace. So that's the devotional for this evening. There are some things that require faith. Some things we have no control, but faith in God makes a difference. Yes, so sometimes, you will meet things that you have no control over. You have no resources to fix it. You are like in despair, like the boys in the sea with cramp. But resilience comes through faith. Your faith in God helps you to be resilient because faith in God tells you God is going to do for me what I cannot do for myself. So the resilience is important. Resilience is important, and there's always that element of faith in resilience. It's always that the foundation. It helps you to have that sense of resilience. Yes, move over. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Pastor Lucas, for that story, which reminds us that we can lean on God and we can depend on him to give us strength in the time of adversity, which is very fitting because our topic this month in February is resilience through adversity. At this time, I would like to invite our next speaker, Mrs. Cherie Sobers, who will speak to us on that topic.
Thank you so much, Lourianne, and thank you, Pastor, for that riveting devotion. As you did say, Lourianne, our topic for this month is resilience through adversity. And, as I introduced it last week, one of the things I would have said to all of us is that we all meet adversities in life. It is how we manage them, how we work with it that determine whether we have that resilient attitude or not. So essentially, resilience is going to be our topic for this month. And today, the title or the topic is The Road to Resilience. So what is resilience again? Just to refresh your memory. And I found another definition that I find it's really, really interesting. It says, essentially, resilience is the ability to effectively cope with difficult life-changing events. As I said before, who among us has not had a difficult life-changing event? We all have had them. Whether, as Pastor said, it is our health, whether it's love. You know, we're in the moments, the season, the month of love. Some of us may not be feeling very loved right now, and that may be an adversity for us. So it is how we are able to effectively cope with those life-changing events. It's also the capacity to make realistic plans and execute them. The thing is, some of us can make beautiful plans, but somehow we lack the follow through, especially and even when we don't want to. I'm sure we know of circumstances where we may have had to do things that we did not want to. We may have had to bury a loved one, say a eulogy at a loved one's funeral, and that is not anything that we want to do, but we had to do it, and we purpose to do it. So it is the capacity to make realistic plans and execute them. It also involves solving difficult problems and taking action when you would prefer to step back. Now, being resilient doesn't mean that the person won't experience difficulty or distress, because most people who have suffered major adversity or trauma in their lives, they commonly experience emotional pain. Not the pain that you can feel if you are hit or if you are hurt, but that is that pain that is deep, deep, deep down in your psyche. And they experience stress. In fact, the road to resilience is likely to involve considerable, a great amount of emotional distress. And this may mean allowing yourself to experience painful emotions. We go through them. We don't bury our heads in the sand. We don't tell ourselves they're not real. We go through, we experience those painful emotions. Now, a very interesting point is, while certain factors in your lives might make some people more resilient than others, resilience is not necessarily a personality trait. It is nothing that one person has. It's not an advantage that one person has over another. It is certainly not anything genetic, nothing in your DNA, as we discussed last week. But it is a skill that anyone can learn. Resilience involves three things: behaviors, thoughts, and actions. And we all can learn a behavior, a thought, and an action, and we all can develop them. So if out there you are listening and you have had a life-changing event and sometimes you feel that you can't manage it, you can't cope, this is a place to be this evening. So how do we develop resilience? First, and that's what we're going to focus on today, by cultivating a resilient attitude. And the first step in cultivating a resilient attitude is to build relationships. We are not an island. No man is an island. However, it depends on who you have on your island that makes the difference. Research shows that strong, supportive relationships can be a powerful driving force behind resilience. Whether it is a friend or friends, family or co-workers, reach out for the support, encouragement, and love during those difficult times. Don't sit back and just let everything overwhelm you. We all have our trusted inner circle of individuals that we know have our back in times of need. But why do we need to build those strong links? Because in our moments of weakness, and we all get weak, as we go through our adversities and troubles, as we question, why me? As we drop to our knees in despair, and sometimes, we really don't even drop to our knees, we just drop into our beds. As we question God and we have all of these questions that we really don't have the answers to, we need to have someone to help us to be that strength for us when we have no strength. Now, a word of caution here, and I'm not talking about a situation where you are there's a negative thing that you are constantly doing and you have a person who enables your behavior. Let me talk about that for a little bit. There's a word in psychology, a term called enabling, and it describes a situation where you help someone, and I put the help in quotes, by attempting to hide the problem or making them go away. That's not what I am talking about. Because the help of an enabler is not helpful, as it usually doesn't make the problem go away entirely. It often makes a situation worse. It enables the person has less motivation, and as a result, does not help. Let me give you an example. You have an adult child that is struggling to manage their money. Never had, mind you, they're working and they have a good salary. They never seem to have enough to pay their rent. And you are constantly helping out. But think about it. In your helping, are you really teaching them how to manage their money? Are you teaching them good money management? That's just a thought for us. So instead of building relationships with persons who are enablers, let's build relationships with persons who will empower us. As you grow through your adversity, as you grow through your difficult situation, these become your cheering squad. Do one of you, do one of them have more than you? That has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with whether they are more successful. It's not about that. But when you have these persons in your life who can empower you, they give you three things. They give you the necessary tools that you need. They give you the access to needed resources, and they teach you the skills. In other words, they give you the power to make the choices that you need to help, with God, of course, to solve your problems. So today, my friends, this evening, remember, if you're going through a tough time with these seamlessly endless stretches of fear, disappointment, pain, and heartache, take note. This evening, my advice to you is, with persons that will empower you, that is the important thing. But more importantly, stay on the road to resilience. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. And if you have questions, of course, we'll be here to answer them later.
Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be healthy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment every day. Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be happy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment to show you care. Take a moment to show you care. Just to show how much you care. Yeah.
Thank you for staying with us. And right now, we will be joined by Dr. Corin Dupuis, who will speak to us on the medical aspect of resilience through adversity. Dr. Dupuis?
All right. Good evening and welcome back to Healing Moments. And we're talking about resilience. Last week, I was talking about particular hormones in your blood. I was talking about how your body maintains equilibrium. We talked about homeostasis and allostasis. But today we're going to talk about wound healing. Now, when you meet hard times, it can feel like a wound to your spirit, but we're going to talk about different types of wounds. Some people say that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can do me no harm. And some people believe that is true, and others will say, no, words can hurt. So what can really harm us? Sticks and stones for sure, knives and cutlasses, but can angry words harm? Can we get hurt by unrequited love, by neglect, by gossip? Is recovery possible from all those things? I'm sure Sister Cherie will talk about that as we go along. But I'm going to talk about physical healing. Our body is wonderfully made, and God intended that our bodies would heal themselves. So every day you're changing lots of old things and making new things. You're changing skin cells all the time. The lining of your gut changes multiple times throughout your life. Liver can regenerate. If you lose a piece of your liver, it will grow back. And even your lungs, if they are damaged, can heal themselves. You can be healed from pneumonia. If one stops smoking, there is damage that can be restored. If one stops drinking alcohol, there is damage to the liver that can be fixed. So our body, God has given us immunity. And I won't go too much into immunity because I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about it as we've discussed the vaccines, etc. But there are two types of immunity we can talk about. There is active immunity, where the body is exposed to a particular disease like the COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, sorry, and develops COVID-19, and it makes antibodies. And those antibodies have memory so that anytime they come in contact with a similar virus or COVID-19 virus again, those antibodies hopefully will fight against the disease. And there is also a passive type of immunity where you can give a person the antibodies that are specific to that disease, and the body will hold on to them so that next time they can be healed. But let's talk about other types of wounds, the bleeding kinds of wounds, the wounds that can be made with sticks and stones and knives and cutlasses. How does our resilient body heal itself? So stage one, you get in your kitchen, you get a cut with a knife. The first thing that happens, your wonderful God-made blood vessels will constrict. In other words, they're going to make the size of their opening smaller, right? They will constrict so that there is less blood flow to that area. Then you have a certain type of cell, in your blood. Those are called platelets. The platelets are now going to stick together, and they're going to activate a clotting cascade that goes from one clotting factor to another. And the blood cells are going to come together, clump together, and then the blood will change from a liquid to a gel. I'm sure you've seen that. You've been cut many times. Now, what happens if you remove that scab or that jelly-like clot from the wound? Of course, it will start bleeding again. And so the same thing when we get mental hurts, for example. If we keep reviving or renewing the same thing that hurt us, we're going to start hurting again. So God has designed your body so that the blood cells constrict. When you get an injury, the platelets stick together and then attract the red blood cells, and they stick together and form a clot. And then you have another phase called inflammation. You will notice that like about 2 or 3 days, that cut is hurting at maximum. So there's going to be swelling around the cut, there's going to be heat, there's going to be pain and redness. And all that is part of the body's response to injury, part of your body's resilience. The swelling is caused by a lot of white blood cells that come to that area and start to eat up that clot. Right. And then afterwards, you have a proliferative phase where all those cells in the region of the cut start proliferating. So many cells form, and eventually they will bridge the two sides of the wound together. And depending on the size of the wound, it could heal in 4 days. If it's a larger cut, it may take 2 or 3 weeks. And then you have the maturation phase, where the rough type of collagen that makes the scar comes to that area, and you get an area of fibrosis. So the scar is never the same as your original skin. Even though you may not be able to see the wound, it heals, but it is never quite the same. The thing we can do when we get a wound, whether physical or mental, is to get it patched up as soon as possible. Sometimes you may need stitches to bring the ends together because they're too far apart. Sometimes you may need, I hope I'm giving Cherie ideas for next week. Sometimes you may need to cover it so that the scab stays in place and the healing begins. Sometimes you may need to take medication to increase the activity of those white blood cells that come into the area to heal. So our bodies are made resilient, just as our minds can be made resilient. What we have to do to try to improve our body's healing is to keep our nutrition optimum, because if there is malnutrition or there are other types of nutrition disorders like diabetes, for example, wound healing can take an awful long time, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all. I will stop there for this evening and turn you back to the host, Lourianne. So see you next week, unless you have questions for me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dupuis, for explaining in detail how wounds occur, how they heal, and the different ways that they can be, the different things that we can do to help the process of our healing, which she suggested that Cherie can also use some of these tips in a different way to show how we can heal some of our hurts, not just physically, but mentally, psychologically. And how Pastor Lucas can explain how these wounds can be healed on a spiritual level. So at this time, we welcome all our guests, all our participants, to send in any questions that you might have, any comments that you might have, any concerns that you might have to us, so that we can answer them and we can have some interaction. So this time we welcome questions for Pastor Lucas and Dr. Dupuis, and just in a few minutes, Mr. Sobers. The questions right now.
Mm.
So Mr. Sobers, are you with us? Oh, we have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
And the question reads, Dr. Dupuis, how does one deal with the scars when they remind you of the wounds?
Yeah, well, that's the difficulty, because the scars never really go away unless it's someplace like that you can't see, like probably your scalp that's covered with hair, but you're never quite the same. And there are some wounds that heal they call hypertrophic scars or keloid scars or proud flesh, where the scar never flattens and it remains quite high. And those can be really troublesome. But if you remind yourself of what it was like before the scar, if you remind yourself of the pain that you went through and how you dealt with it, probably you can be proud of the scar. I know some people who show off their scars. So I had a broken hand and it healed. And it's almost like a rite of passage when you have certain scars. So I guess it depends, Dr. Lawrence, on your outlook. And I think that can work for both mental and physical scars. They will always be there to remind you, but let them remind you of how strong you are and of how much you've come through. And maybe one day you can show them off. Leroy, you muted. Does that answer your question? You're welcome.
The question I have to add to that is the scars, when they do heal, is that skin or is that area, does it become stronger or not?
No, it's actually, it never comes back to the full, it never regains the full elasticity of normal skin. It comes up to probably about 80% of what it was before. But most of the time you don't notice it because you're not really testing the strength of it, but it never comes back to 100%. And sometimes the remodeling phase may take quite a long while before it fully remodels to what to as close as what your normal flesh was like. But there are internal organs that fully recover and come back to what they were before. But skin is not one of them. Yes, I guess we have to remind ourselves that even though we have the scars, the pain of the scars has gone, the physical pain has gone. Mental pain takes a little longer to go away, but we can, if we treat it the same way, we can be happy that the pain is actually gone.
But there are some scars that even though they have physically healed, they do not, you still feel the pain years after. What about those?
Yes, because as I said, the tissue never really fully remodels. And sometimes you may have to get some medical help, like steroids, etc., to reduce the swelling in that area. And there are, for example, joints that never return to their full strength. And you may have to assist those joints by wearing a brace, for example. So that's you helping your body to be resilient when it is not as fully resilient as we would like it to be. So sometimes we have to end up wearing braces and hooks and pieces of metal to actually help with healing in particular regions where where it has overwhelmed the capacity of the body to fully recover.
Can I jump in there, Lourianne?
Sure, sure.
Just to jump in there, Lourianne, you know, our God is such an awesome God. When you think of what Dr. Dupuis is describing, the physicality, I'm not sure if I'm using the right word. The mentality is the same, and the mental works the same, because we all have those scars and if you look at what I spoke about earlier in terms of building strong, supportive relationships, when you as an individual, when you are weak, that's why it's so important that your inner circle be those that can hold you up. They can be your crutches. Just like when you break a leg, they can be the crutches to help you. So it's the same in the mental world. It's also important that your mind is renewed, that your mind is focused on positive thinking, that in your mind you have that your attitude is one where you understand that you have to go through it, and you do not ask, constantly, why me, why is this happening, what have I done wrong, what is it about me, but you understand that all of this is part of your growth process, and to grow you must go through it. We use a lot of phrases, a lot of catchphrases, but that is really true. How else will we know that our mental muscles are there unless we exercise them? Same in the physical world. We want to gain muscle. Yes, we all have muscle, but we want to strengthen our muscles. We have to use them. It's the same thing. And on the opposite, if we don't, something else happens. So just to jump in there, just to add that in the mental world, in the emotional world, it's quite the same.
Add this aspect to it. Spirituality really is designed to heal, restore. But sometimes people use it to abuse and create scars in people, spiritual scars. Some have some pretty wrong understandings of scripture, and it leads them to turn away from God. Oftentimes, is how persons interpret it. So there are spiritual scars. Seeing that we're dealing with resilience, right? I think being able to resist these things is important. It's important. Number one, faith in God, right? Faith in God is important to help you to ride out these areas of spiritual scars that you may get from what people have said and from what is practiced. But spiritual scars can be healed, and your faith in God is crucial to this, right? It's crucial. All right? Okay.
Thank you very much, Pastor Lucas and Mrs. Sobers, for tying this together so nicely with what Dr. Dupuis presented. Someone did ask a question, but Dr. Dupuis did answer it without even realizing. The person asked, can scars that hurt be corrected? And she did answer that question in a sense. So we would like to thank all our participants, all our guests for joining us this evening. We know that a lot of times we might have questions and there might be reservations to ask them, but we invite you that every night, every Thursday evening when you join us, you come with an open mind and an open heart, and you ask your questions, and we are more than willing to answer them and to respond to you. At this time, we would like to close. We once again thank you for joining us here on Healing Moments, and we ask you to join us next week, Thursday, as we continue on the topic resilience through adversity.
Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be healthy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment every day. Take a moment for your body. Take a moment for your mind. Take a moment for your spirit. Take a moment to be well. Take a moment to be happy. Take a moment when you pray. Take a moment for worship. Take a moment to show you care. Take a moment to show you care. Just to show how much